Hello, I'm Caleb Johnson with APSU-TV. In this election special, we will look at 5 candidates running for State Senate in District 22 for Montgomery, Stewart, and Houston counties. We extended this offer to interview all the candidates running for State Senate with 2 declining interviews. The general election starts April 23rd with early voting ending April 2nd. Thank you, and go out and vote.
First off, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me, Ebony. I'm tickled to be here.
That's great. All right, our first question is, what are some of your policies, and what are you hoping to change as a state senator with these policies?
Well, Ebony, my background's in IT, and I'm really passionate about getting high-speed internet out to our rural areas. They need it for several reasons. One, to take economic development out to Houston County, Stewart County, and those people choose to live in those rural communities, and they want to be able to work, play, and live in those communities. So getting high-speed internet will give them that ability to be able to get some good quality jobs out in those areas. And it'll also help the students with education, being able to take online classes. And it also will help our veterans and elderly get treatment services over the internet with doctors and not having to drive in to that. I really want to concentrate on education, really support our teachers. I think our kids need a choice because not every child thrives under the same teaching environment. And so for them to be able to have a choice where, and our teachers being able to have the time to spend with them. We've got them so bogged down with paperwork and standardized testing that it's hard for them to spend the time they need with our kids. So I'm real passionate about education and the high-speed internet.
You mentioned education, and that kind of like popped up a question. I don't know if this is something that you've considered or looked at, but what are your thoughts about the school safety and the security that the schools currently have? You know, we've had a couple of incidents and all that have, you know, threatened the safety of the teachers and the staff and the students.
Right.
So,
right.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, I think it's very important for us to have security at the schools, and I know that Governor Lee has already signed and has a lot of interest in putting millions of dollars into supplying school resource officers at our schools. So I think it's very important that we have good security in our schools.
What experiences do you have that make you a good leader? And with these experiences, what are you hoping to learn?
Great. I've had, my career spans almost 40 years, and I've been really blessed to work under and be mentored by some really great leaders. I've been in management and leadership for probably 25 of those, almost 40 years. And I think my greatest asset is that I love to mentor people and help them grow and to become great leaders. So if people have a willing and a teachable spirit, I love to take them under my wing, young ladies, and help them grow and be successful in what they do. And I'm a good listener, and you know, people come into my office and I listen and help them. God gifted me with great problem-solving skills, and I can help them solve problems. And I just love encouraging young people and helping them grow in their careers.
That is definitely something we need, especially now with, you know, people wanting to do things but easily becoming discouraged, and so with just life in general.
It is. Life's tough, and it's easy to get discouraged. Even through this campaign, I get discouraged, but I just sit down and pray about it, and I've had a great day today. So it's you know, you just need to be around people that mentor you and love you and want to encourage you. And so that really will help you grow, just choosing the people you hang around and hanging around people that are positive, that will mentor you and help you grow.
What are you hoping to accomplish while in the state Senate?
Yeah, well, besides the high-speed internet and the education, I really want to listen to my constituents. I've loved going around and talking with Houston County and Stewart County and hearing what their concerns are in Montgomery County. And I think I'll do a lot of meetings and hear what they have to say and accomplish what they're needing in their communities, because that's why I'm there, to help my constituents accomplish what they need in their communities.
What inspired you to run for state Senate, and who inspired you?
I was assessor of property for Montgomery County. I was voted 2 terms. And then some of the people that I worked with at the state level as assessor had contacted me, gosh, a year ago when they thought Trump was going to appoint Mark Green to be over our military. And I really had no interest in getting back into politics. I kept saying no, and then finally one day I said, okay, I'm just going to pray about it. And after praying about it, I felt like that's what where the Lord was leading me. And so I had a girlfriend call me, take me to lunch, say, hey, the Lord wants me to tell you, you need to surrender to His call. So I'm like, okay, here we go. So I'm back in, I pull papers, and here I am. I'm very grounded in my faith. I pray about just about every decision I make. And after praying about it, I felt like this was God's next move, next chapter in my life.
It's amazing how things like that can happen.
Yeah, yes.
Are you planning on having any town halls? And if so, what are you hoping to gain from these?
Yeah, we'll do a lot of town halls. Once I'm elected, we'll do several, and I want to stay out in the rural communities and stay out in the rural areas in Montgomery County and really talk to them and see what they need. And we'll hold a lot of town halls and hear what they have to say. And I've run a real grassroots campaign. I've had boots on the ground, just out talking to people and finding out what their needs are. And I'll continue that after election. I'll, still go and eat breakfast with people and eat lunch with people and just be out there listening and finding out what their needs are. When you asked about experience, I have a lot of government experience. I was the IT director. I was hired right after the tornado came through Montgomery County.
Ooh.
And was able to rebuild the IT infrastructure and run the fiber and all the networking that we need to rebuild, get all our departments together and get email to the desktop and help the employees get more effective and efficient. And then I was asked to serve as the Accounts and Budgets Director for a couple of years. And when I did that, understand governmental budgeting and what it takes to get the budget for education, fighting with the state to get our full BEP funding, and working with the federal government to get their funding for the kids that we educate that come from the military. So I understand government budgeting also. And then, of course, I was elected assessor of property and understand tax base and property assessments. And Governor Haslam appointed me 2 terms to the State Board of Equalization. So I've been serving at the state level already, and I'm currently serving on the State Board of Equalization at the state level.
That's really cool. You got a lot of experience.
I do have a lot of governmental experience. And I've been really blessed and fortunate to be able to serve Montgomery County.
You basically know what you're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, remember you saying something about really getting down with people, like in the rural communities, and like getting down to them on a not really a personal level, but more as like on the ground. Because people usually view politicians as like, oh my gosh, and when you just see that they're just like you, it's like,
yeah, you're exactly right. It's just a job. It's and then when you're in politics, it's a job that you're serving the people. And every job I've ever had and in any management, I always tell, especially in IT, the employees of that company are your customers. So we need to be out with them, fixing their problems, helping them do their job better. And so as State Senate, my customers are all the constituents, all 190-something thousand of people that live in those 3 counties. Those would be my customers. And if I don't make the customers happy, then I'm out of a job. So I always view it as I'm a servant, and I have a servant's heart. So I'm a servant for those people, and making happen what they need to happen will be my job.
Well, thank you so much for coming in once
welcome.
again.
You're welcome. And thank you for having me. And I just would like to invite everybody out to vote. This Republican primary is going to be very close, so every vote counts, and together we can keep District 22 a strong district. And early voting goes on from now until March 2nd, and the final Republican primary is March the 7th. And would love to have your support. I know my granddaughter's 10 years old, and we were talking about how we were going to run the campaign, and my 10-year-old granddaughter said, Mama, we're better together. So together, we can all go to Nashville and make our community a thriving environment. Thank you so much for your vote.
Hi, my name is Juanita Charles, and I'm running for State Senate District 22, which encompasses Montgomery, Stewart, and Houston counties. We have Election Day on April 23rd, 2019, with early voting from April 3rd to April 18th. For more information about me and where I stand on the issues, you can look me up at charlesforsenate.com. Thank you.
So question one is, what are your policies and what are you hoping to change as a state Senate member with these policies?
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
So my top 3 priorities, so I have a lot of things that I would like to change and a lot of policies that I would like to implement that would just really overall positively impact the quality of life of the citizens of District 22. So District 22 covers Montgomery County, Stewart County, and Houston County. So my top 3 priorities are education, infrastructure, and healthcare. Healthcare, because Tennessee is one of the most unhealthy states in the union. We have over 450,000 people that are uninsured, and we have an additional 165 to 185,000 people who have no real access to health care whatsoever.
Right.
And so because of that, I think, it's definitely an issue that we need to address, and we can do that really easily with the expansion of Medicaid. So with the expansion of Medicaid, not only will we be able to give healthcare access to those people who don't have it, but we will also be able to keep our rural hospitals open. So right now we have a lot of hospitals that are being closed, including one of them that's in Houston County. It's Houston County Community Hospital. One of the first things I did when I decided to run for office is go down there because they were on the shutdown list. And so we did a press conference out there, but that is already the only hospital available to that community. And if that hospital were to close, those people would have to travel either to Clarksville or to Nashville, which in many cases is about 45 miles.
Yeah, that's a long time. That's a long drive.
It really is to be able to get care, and I think we're going to lose a lot of lives unnecessarily.
Yeah.
So along with healthcare as well, we do want to be able to effectively fight the opioid crisis. So right now we're having about 7 overdoses a day in the state of Tennessee. And so one of the most effective tools that I've seen for that is legalizing or decriminalizing marijuana. In states that have legalized marijuana, they have seen a significant reduction in opioid addiction and overdoses.
Now, are we talking like medical marijuana or like just marijuana in general?
So some people, they toss it back and forth and they say, well, they only want medical. In my opinion, we should just legalize it, whether it's medical or recreational. We have a lot of things in the state of Tennessee that we want to accomplish, and we will be able to use the tax income that comes from that the sale of recreational marijuana to be able to accomplish some of those other goals that we have. I have some ambitious goals, but I think, together we can accomplish those goals. So again, I do want to expand Medicaid. When it comes to infrastructure, and this kind of leads into the marijuana thing, because if we legalize it, regulate it, and tax it the way it should be, we can also realize the same profits that the state of Colorado has seen with billions of dollars in tax revenues that they've been able to use to help their veteran population, their homeless population, and a lot of those other underserved populations. So when it comes to infrastructure, one thing that we've seen is that some of the rural areas do not have access to broadband. So they don't have internet access. They have something that's more equivalent to dial-up, or if they can get internet, it is at a very expensive price.
That'll affect a lot of people who are like trying to maybe have to do things for school or work when they don't have that access. Very
true, very true. It's definitely vital in education, and then in employment. So the populations of Stewart and Houston County, a lot of their populations are elderly, or large portions are elderly and disabled. And I think a lot of people don't think about what employment opportunities look like for them. With that broadband access, they can do work at home jobs, which opens up a whole new world of opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And then another thing when we talk about the broadband access that actually goes back to the healthcare is that we have this thing called telemedicine. And so even, let's say if their hospital does close down, which hopefully it does not, at least we can have telemedicine where they'll be able to communicate with their doctors via the internet, and be able to at least get some level of care without having to drive an hour and a half or however long to see their doctors. Yeah. Another thing by way of infrastructure is our roads. So
Oh, you don't have to tell me twice.
Right, you know, and everybody drives our roads, and I think it's just something, you know, that additionally will help with our quality of life. I think infrastructure is the base upon which our quality of life is built, and so we definitely need to take care of that. Road issues and traffic is always going to be a concern, especially as we continue to grow. So I think those are things that we definitely need to take care of. Number one, I think we need to expand Highway 24. So right now where we are, it's just a 2-lane highway heading into Nashville, and I think, yeah. So
Yeah, I know.
and it's like, there seems like there's an issue with it, like every day it's always backed up. And so I would like to expand it to 3 or 4 lanes. And you know, and I know those things cost money, so I'm not, you know, just throwing things out there just to throw them out. I think if we legalize marijuana, we'll be able to use that tax base and that tax income that we receive from those sales to be able to widen those roadways and be able to do other things across the state that we need to do. Another road in our district, in District 22, it's in Montgomery County, but it gives easier access to Houston and Stewart County, is Purple Heart Parkway. So you know how like 101st it goes and then it ends? I think if we continue it and let it go into Palmyra, that'll give easier access for people who live in Stewart and Houston County to come in Montgomery County and even commute to Nashville in some cases,
Yeah.
and just have greater access to to our area. So everybody, I feel like in our area we're a little kind of sectioned off, and I think if we can work together and make sure that our populations thrive together, then we'll all be that much better for it.
Yeah.
Let's see, so going into, so I've covered healthcare a little bit.
Education.
Yes, I need to go into education.
Yeah.
So with
Most
education.
important thing to me, at least.
Right, and it's important to everybody, and it should be, because that's how we ensure that our future generations can continue to, for lack of a better term at this point, take care of business, right? So, so number one, I think we need to invest in our teachers. So I think our teachers do a lot, and I think they're not, and it's not all about the money, but we do want to make sure that people that take care of our children are taken care of. So I think we need to invest in them by giving them higher salaries. We need to address student testing. So you just got out of high school, so you know what the testing is like.
And it doesn't help that they've switched to virtual testings, and
Yeah.
like when, you know, the students are, and all these students in different schools and different counties are getting onto the same website, it's like they don't expect it to crash, but yet it does.
Exactly, exactly. There's a lot of testing, and then I think because of the way it's gone, it's become a thing where it's almost like you're testing just to be testing, and then
Yeah.
like you said, and then the different platforms that you use, the time that that like you said, the systems crash and everything, and that's kind of, especially you have a student that's already like bad at test taking, and then that happens, and you're like, you know. So I think
it causes more stress than needed.
right.
They're already stressed out. They have to take like this really important test that could determine whether you get into college or if you don't.
Exactly, it creates more anxiety, and obviously that's never good, right?
No.
So,
Nope.
So, and another thing with student testing is the way that they've linked student testing to teacher performance.
They're rated
Based on
the results of the students.
Exactly, and that to me is unfair and it's unproductive, because that's what has led to so many teachers ending up teaching to the test, because it's kind of like, okay, if if the students don't do well on the test, no matter how well you taught them throughout the year, it
looks bad on you.
Yeah, and not only that, you could lose your job, so that affects your livelihood. And so it behooves the teacher to be able to make sure that their students do well on the test. But then I think at that point, the students end up missing out on valuable other instruction, things that are outside of the test. And I think it ends up just being unproductive and overall negative for our school system.
Now, I do have a question about like the whole thing, but when it comes to school safety, how would you approach that? Because we have had a couple of occurrences where, there have been incidents happening at school that threaten the safety of the students or the faculty. Mm-hmm. So how would you address that?
So when it comes to school safety, I like the idea of having properly trained officers on campus, the student resource officers. I like the idea of having properly trained student resource officers. There's a couple options, I guess, that have come across that I've seen that I wasn't really a fan of, because I think it ends up putting students in more harm. But I think, you know, we do have like the active shooter drills, which I mean is unfortunate that they're necessary, but I do, you know, like that we have those. But I think maybe put in some sort of safety mechanism in each classroom, so if there is a active shooter, you know, we can keep the students safe that way. So, I mean, definitely student safety is really important, and not just for my children and not just because my kids go to the school, but, you know, for all of the students. So that, and in addition to what I've said, that is definitely a subject that I will research further and see what other options we have available to us.
All right.
So, yeah. Let's see, what do we talk about? Education.
I think we covered all of them.
Yeah. So those,
right.
yeah. So those are my top 3 priorities.
So, second question is, what experiences do you have that make you a good leader? And with these experiences, what are you hoping to learn? So
I was in the Army before. That's actually how I ended up in Clarksville. So I got stationed at Fort Campbell in 2005. My husband was stationed there too. We were a dual military couple, so both of us were active duty Army. So in the military, I had been a squad leader, a platoon sergeant, which was a different experience. Yeah, exactly. So and one experience that I actually hadn't talked about a whole lot. So when I first got pinned as an E5 sergeant, when I first became an NCO, my first sergeant, he told me, he said, you know what? He said, we're going to do trial by fire. And I was like, I'm not sure what that is. It doesn't sound like I know what that is. And I don't think I'm going to like it, but you don't really have a choice, right? So he says, he said, we're going to make sure that you're the best NCO you can be. Okay. And I was like, so he's going to give me awesome soldiers. He went and picked like what people had considered to be not the stellar soldiers in our unit, and he gave me all of them. Like, he gave all of them to me. He's like, it is your job to whip all of them into shape. And I'm like, oh, okay.
That sounds fun.
Yes, I'm like, you realize I'm new at this. Okay, let's do it. You know. So and I had a lot of guidance from the non-commissioned officers that were around me, but it was something that I could kind of point to every time when I'm given a difficult task or something I hadn't done before. So those soldiers, like a lot of them, they couldn't pass their PT test, like their physical training. They could not meet the physical standards as far as like training, and so I would take them out at 1500 every day, and we would run a couple miles. We would do extra. They call it special population PT. So I would take my soldiers and other soldiers, but those are just some. It's one of those things where you see what needs to be done and then you just do it. Like, I know that this is what they're having problems with. I know in order to make them the best soldiers that they can be, these are the standards that they need to meet, and so this is what I need to do to help them meet those standards, and that's what I did. So if it was anything about their uniforms, I took time with them personally. Hey, let me show you how to. So this was back in the day when you used to iron your uniforms, because we used to iron them. But I would take them and, hey, this is how you properly iron your uniform. This is how you properly shine your boots. And you take that one-on-one time and you make sure that they know. And number one, making sure that they know what the expectations are, and then 2, showing them how to meet the expectations. Because after that, after I've shown you, then you know it's more likely that you'll be able to meet that. But that was one of the experiences that I think have made me a better leader, and I continue to build on throughout, you know, over time. As far as like the new experience at State Senate, what I expect to learn from that or take away from that is really just how to better be a servant leader. So, you know, I plan to continue to listen to constituents, because being a realtor, all I do is I talk to people all day, every day. I know what their concerns are. I know what, you know, in different areas of the district, whether it's Stewart, Houston, or Montgomery County, I know what people's concerns are just based on selling them houses. They'll say, well, you know, I'll live here, but this house doesn't have internet, and sometimes I work from home, you know, or whatever it may be. And that's actually exactly how I came up with my top 3, because those were the top 3 things that people talk to me about the most. So what I plan to take away from this experience is one, being able to be closer and having a better relationship with the population overall, and really just being able to make sure that I represent them, not just to the best of my ability, but making sure that I'm an actual voice for them. So.
Right. The third question, what are you hoping to accomplish while in the State Senate?
What I want to do while I'm in the State Senate, my overall goal, is to make sure as our community continues to grow and move forward, that we don't leave anybody behind. That's really the biggest, my main goal. So I want to make sure we listen to everybody, see what everybody's concerns are, and make sure we address those as we continue to grow and move forward. But there are certain sections of our population that aren't seeing the same benefits, whether it be economically or whatever, all the growth that we're experiencing in Montgomery, Stewart, and Houston County, and I want to make sure that everybody can benefit from that.
Well, what inspired you to run for state senate, and if it was a person, who inspired you?
In this community, since I've lived here, I've been a soldier, a young soldier, actually living like paycheck to paycheck. I have been a college student as we were invested in our education. My husband and I went to college at the same time and earned our degree in 2012. I've been a working mom, as I am now, but I was also a stay-at-home parent at one point, which was one of the hardest things that there is to do. You know, and then I started a business. You know, I've started this business, and it sustains me from this day. And I say that it sustains our family. And I say that to say that, you know, I've worked in all these roles, I've played all of these roles living in District 22, and I think that gives me a broader perspective of different people in this area. So when I go to the state level, I know that I can better advocate for them because I've been in their shoes, and I know, you know, I know what their situation is like. Mm-hmm. When it comes to who inspired me, I would have to say my daughters. So I have 3 daughters, and you met my daughters. So, but 10, 12, and 5 months. So I just had a baby. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, thank you. And so as I'm naming off these qualities that I want in somebody, and I figured, you know, wow, you know, I possess all of these things that I want to see in somebody, you know, that runs for this position. And the things I always tell my daughters is like, you know what, if you see something that needs to be done, you don't have to sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. If something needs to be done, step up and do it. You know, because if not you, then who? You know, and if not now, then when? Right. You know, you don't have to put it off. You don't have to wait. And sometimes maybe it's not gonna feel like the right time. But when I sat and I considered and I thought about it, you know, and leading by example, which is what my husband and I always teach our daughters, and we want to show them and be that example. It's like, you know what, now is the perfect time to lead by example and show them. So, you know, I'm doing this not only for my daughters, but for everybody's daughters, you know, because representation matters. So whether you're a minority, whether you're a woman, whether you're a young person, whatever it may be, it's good to see somebody like you in a position that lets you know that, you know what, I can do that too, because representation matters. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Last question, are you planning on having any town halls? And if so, what are you hoping to gain from them?
Yes, so I plan to do town halls on a regular basis. So once in office, I think I want to go ahead and kind of get those mapped out, so right away people know exactly when they can come meet me. And so what I plan to gain from that is just a perspective from the community at large. Like, I want to know what everybody thinks. I want everybody's input, just like I'm doing now. And that's why I'm having meet and greets just on a regular basis, and I'm trying to schedule them in different parts of town so more people can come out. And that's exactly what I'm trying to get from those right now. So our meet and greets and our town halls will probably have a similar goal, and it's really just to get the input from everybody. I want everybody to meet me. I want to be able to interact with people. I want them to know that I am accessible. I want them to know that I am here for them. And I want to know what their concerns are and make sure that I take care of those on the state level.
Thank you so much for coming here today.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad that you asked me. I really appreciate your time.
Hello, I'm Ebony Cottrell, and I have Mr. Doyle Clark here today to answer questions about his pursuit for a seat in the state Senate. So, first off, thank you for coming in with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so the first question is, what are some of your policies, and what are you hoping to accomplish while in the state Senate?
Honestly, I'm hoping to bring real representation to our state government. Far too often I've seen that some of our more rural areas and even some of disenfranchised peoples in the city of Clarksville haven't really had a voice. It's just sort of been whole lot of the same for a whole long time, and I think it's time to shake things up a bit and have someone that'll listen to people.
So can you go into a little bit more detail as to, like, what exactly are you wanting to push for, like, besides giving giving the citizens a voice?
Sure. Some of the key issues that I'm looking to fight for are education, and that's being opposed to school voucher programs and furthering basically tearing down some of the Tennessee-ready things that have went terribly, terribly wrong in our area, which is why it's garnered the nickname Tennessee Not Ready. I think we should kind of get our teachers back towards teaching and not administering tests and instructing children on how to take a test. I think kids would learn a lot more if they were able to just be taught. Some veterans issues we have. Some veteran small business owners I've talked to have said that they would like to see some loan guarantee programs to start a small business in the same way that the VA can guarantee a home buying loan for those same veterans. And as well as expanding some of the veterans assistance programs that we have, breaching out into the city of Erin and reinforcing the city of Dover so that we can alleviate a lot of the wait times that we have in Clarksville, or even having some of those men and women traveling all the way to Nashville just for basic care. I think they would benefit more from having that care at home and obviously having a much shorter wait time to be seen. I'm also fighting for farms. I grew up on a farm, and obviously I'm a big proponent for farms, which also kind of are part of small business. And the small business community has been more than welcome to show their support for me. And the biggest thing I'd like to see for them is to take away some of the heavy top-end tax cuts we give to mega corporations and big businesses, and give those instead to small businesses, because a lot of our small businesses are being taxed to death, and those taxes are supplementing the income that we could be getting from large businesses. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There are several issues that have been brought to my attention the longer I campaign, and a lot of that stuff can be found on my personal Facebook page, and I've been running some videos answering people's questions about that too.
So you mentioned education, and we have a question that kind of arises from that. And it's how do you feel about school safety? Like, do you have any policies through that? You know, we have been having a couple of incidences in the past that have threatened the safety of the students, the staff, and what do you have anything?
Sure.
Like that?
We have been very blessed in Montgomery, Houston, and Stewart counties that we haven't had any of those tragedies occur in our schools. Now, obviously, now would be the best time to prevent that. I'm not entirely sure forcing armed teachers is the best idea. There are lots of inventors that are coming up with easy stopgap measures that can prevent an active shooter from actually entering a classroom. If you've actually been inside a classroom that's been made in the last 10 to 15 years, the only kind of access point is a very thick glass window that's only about 6 to 8 inches wide and a foot and a half tall. It's very small. So basically, if you can prevent that door from being opened, you can save a lot of children's lives. I would like to see something implemented like that on our local level. And then, of course, it does kind of fall more towards the individual counties themselves, but increasing the presence of school resource officers would be a wonderful thing. And if that needs to come from a state budget perspective, I'm not sure, because a lot of that does actually pull from local funding. But that is something that I would definitely help our citizens fight for and our local governments fight for, is more SRO funding to make that a reality.
The second question is, what experiences do you have that make you a strong leader? And with these experiences, what are you hoping to learn?
This has been one of the biggest learning processes ever, because most of my what I'm fighting for and issues like that, they're not my ideas. These are things that have been brought to me by people. My stances on small businesses come from multiple conversations with small business owners that these are the things they want to see. These are the things they need. My stances on education, they come from talking to teachers that are in the classroom every single day. Farms, it's phone calls, after dark with farmers talking about what can we do to help protect family farms and help that become a business that thrives. So what I'm hoping to learn, that's not something I can answer, because I'm learning something new and different almost every single day, and it's been a wonderful experience. I know you had, there was a first part to that question, but I knew to latch on to that second part.
What experiences do you have?
What experiences do I have? 15 years of working in public service with sales and customer service, which if you've ever had to interact at all with customers and clients, you
Yes.
know that is a hard-learned lesson, and you learn it every single day, and it gets drilled into you, and you are taught how to listen and how to empathize and how to understand what people are actually listening for. One of the more interesting things I ever learned was when I was actually in just solidly sales, and my sales manager, who was also kind of like a sales coach, told me, if someone ever tells you no, N-O, that probably means K-N-O-W. They need to know more about what you're trying to do for them. They don't just necessarily say no. A lot of people will just say, I'm not interested, or I don't want to learn, or you're not being clear enough, so no. But what they really mean is, I need to learn. And that kind of goes back to the second part of it's a learning experience. And there's always something new to learn, especially running for a district seat like this that encompasses so many people, and from such a wild variety of background and demographics. There's just, District 22 is just a cornucopia of people, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we gotta learn something some days. Sometimes we gotta step out of our own comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah. So third question would be, what or who inspired you to run for the state senate?
I love this question because my answer is always super specific, and it usually unsettles some people, but Senate Bill number 36. That is the bill that was proposed by some representatives, and it basically makes drinking the milk of a dairy cow that you own a partial interest in illegal.
What?
Exactly. It was brought to my attention by my dad, and I almost couldn't believe it. I had to look it up myself, and there it was, plain as day. The state government is trying to tell you that if you drink that milk, it is illegal. You also can't use it because it does say drink or use would be illegal.
So if you own a cow and you wanted to have some cereal, you couldn't use that cow's milk?
That would be illegal, correct. And it kind of reflects my sentiments on states' rights and a smaller, more compact government that stays out of your household. It's just an affront to personal liberty for our state government to say, you can't drink that, it's illegal. I don't care if you own the cow or own a partial interest in the cow, that's illegal. And that did not sit right with me, and that's when I talked with my wife, and we both agreed that we have seen lots of education bills gone wrong in our state government, and so we decided together that if this was real, we would go through the steps and drum up the support. Luckily, our state government has a wonderful website. It's tennessee.tn.gov, and you can go through there, and as well as just registering to vote and doing all those other wonderful things, you can click on our state government, and you can view the bills that are currently on the floor, which are like 1,700. But you can go through and you can read them individually, and it was just, wow, that's there, and I cannot believe that I'm actually reading that.
This 2019, the strange things we all see.
Exactly.
The next question is, are you planning on having any town halls? And if so, what are you hoping to gain from these?
We are hoping to have some town halls. We're actually looking to have 3 town halls, one in Clarksville, one in Dover, and one in Erin. They will be announced a little shortly after the primaries close. What we're really hoping to gain is momentum and support, and for the most part to actually make sure that people are registered, that people have an up-to-date voter registration, and we'll have all the information for that. If you have seen any of my small business posters in your favorite small business, you'll actually see that I have a QR code on there. You scan that with your phone, and it will take you straight to the Tennessee government website to verify, update, or change your address for your voter registration. Because sometimes I basically getting on the ballot requires a petition with 25 verified signatures. And I talked to lots of friends and family and, you know, just good acquaintances and stuff. And most people are like, yeah, no, my voter registration's good. But it wasn't. When the county election commissioner checked it, they came back not actually verifiable. So at those events, you know, obviously people will be able to sign up and donate their time and money to the campaign. They'll be able to have, you know, basically hear from me and answer their questions in person. But the biggest thing is they'll be able to get resources on voter registration, making sure that they're in the system right and that they can actually cast their ballot on April 23rd, which is the general election. Early voting dates for that, I don't exactly have memorized, but I do know that the last date to register to vote is March the 25th. So if you're watching this and you're unsure or you're not quite positive if you updated your address, make sure that you go on to tennessee.gov and make sure that that voter registration is up to date with your current address, or you will not be able to vote.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you again some other day.
I'm looking forward to it.
Hello, I'm Caleb Johnson, and I have David Cutting here today to answer some questions about his pursuit for a seat in the state Senate. So, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. And
Good.
Brief introduction. Of course, I'm David Cutting. I'm married and father of 8 and grandfather of 8, and a Clarksville homeowner for 14 years. I'll start with a quote from President John F. Kennedy. "Let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer." As a candidate who is independent of all political parties, I will always seek the right answer. I will listen to the residents and to my conscience, and most importantly, to God through His Word. I'm a retired architectural engineer, having studied at Pratt Institute while working at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and a retired small business owner. My Tampa, Florida printing and advertising business was once named Small Business of the Year by a local radio station. Currently, along with caring for our 13-year-old daughter, I work part-time in ride sharing. I'm currently a public health emergency response volunteer, a member of the CMCSS Advisory Council, and attend Life Point Church. I've been a Little League manager, big brother, assistant scout leader, school advisory council member, president of the North Florida section of the American Association of Coast Engineers, surveyors union member and Sunday school teacher, and a volunteer at my daughter's schools, Manor Cafe, and the animal shelter. I'm running to give you the choice of a public servant who is not bought by special interest groups, who owes allegiance only to you and our Maker, who will listen to your needs and will use this position to make a difference in all our lives. My top issues are affordable health care, adequate public education funding for pre-K through college, criminal justice reform, raising the minimum wage, services to our veterans and the elderly, valuable jobs for our district, major improvements to the infrastructure, and expansion of broadband to the remote areas. We need education and we need good jobs for our children. We do not need more privately owned jails and incarcerations. Please remember me as being on the cutting edge of progress for Houston, Montgomery, and Stewart counties. Reach me at davidcutting.com and facebook.com/Tennessee Senate District 22. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So, real quick, David, so what are some of your policies and what are you planning to accomplish if you were to attain the Senate seat?
Okay, well, I just enumerated my main ones. In terms of, let's look at affordable health care. The state legislature has refused in the past to accept former Governor Haslam's plan to extend Medicaid.
Right.
And $1 billion is just sitting there unused by the state of Tennessee. I would work hard to get that into effect. Also, I'm aware that the state employees insurance now covers acupuncture. And I think by extending that over to Medicaid and over to TennCare coverage for acupuncture, it might help to reduce the opioid problem in the state. If acupuncture can take people off opioids, let's give it a try. That's my main concern, is affordable health care.
So what experiences do you have and what makes you qualified to actually have the Senate seat, and what are you hoping to learn?
Well, I think my background in architecture, engineering, and construction, along with my small business experience, gives me a very well-rounded background for the job. Right. I've also had leadership roles in the past. I mentioned having been president of my engineering society. That was back in Florida for a year. And other areas, leadership of children in playing baseball, scouting, and the like, and just leadership in the family. 8 children, you learn a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wow. So next question is, who or what inspired you to run for state senate?
Okay, this is very dear to my heart. It's my daughter, Kiara. Okay. 3 years ago, I had a phone call from Matt Kuhn in Memphis telling me that Mark Green was going to run unopposed for re-election. And we only had a day and a half to fix that. Would I be willing to run? And I started to think of my past, my childhood, when the Soviet Union was a major threat. We had air raid drills, and I learned how in the Soviet Union, elections had one name. It was the Communist Party candidate, that was it. And Mark Green is far from being a communist. I wouldn't accuse him of anything. He's a good man. But I did not want him to run unopposed. So I asked Kiara, who was sitting with me, Kiara, should I do it? And she said, go for it, Daddy. And I did. The next day, my wife and I went down to Veterans Plaza. We picked up the forms. We shared them. We got all the signatures, filed them. They counted them for us that day. I got certified copies. The next morning, I raced down to Erin and Dover and filed in the other 2 counties just before the noon deadline, so that Mark Green would not run unopposed. I learned later that another friend also filed to run as in the Republican primary against him. Now, having only gained 35% of the vote back then against the Republican incumbent in the Republican district, and Kiara being gone, she's been in heaven for almost 2 years now.
Sorry to hear that.
Yes. I have this feeling that she still wants me to accomplish this. Absolutely. She wants me to make a difference, and that's what I want to do. If I win this, I promise I will make a difference.
Absolutely. Okay, great. The next question we have is about town halls. How do you plan on reaching out to the community? And if so, what are you hoping to gain from these town halls that you could have with the community?
Basically everything. I mentioned that since I'm not responsible to either political party or any group or any PAC, I'm responsible to the residents. So I want to have town halls in which I can listen to the residents and get their input for everything and anything. And I would have town halls operating in Clarksville, Dover, and Erin. Additional, if there's turnout, we could expand it. As long as I could get space in schools or churches.
Right.
I would have frequent town halls.
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for actually coming and seeing us today, David Cutting. Are there any other remarks you want to make before we wrap things up?
Broadband. We need to expand it into the rural areas. I mentioned that earlier. I'd like to expand on that a little bit. In the country of India,
Right.
there are 400 million cell phone users. That is more people than we have in this country.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And American companies are scrambling to get in on that market.
Right.
Apple is one who's trying to get in. India, though, is trying to keep them out. They're trying to keep it localized. And the cost for high-speed internet in India for your cell phones for premium service is $1.70.
Wow.
And Apple's scrambling to get in on that $1.70 market, and that's for the premium service. Not all 400 million people have premium.
Right.
As in contrast, I pay $80 monthly for unlimited talk, text, and data for my 13-year-old daughter and myself. That's for 2 phones.
Right.
And Verizon is very happy to have us. I get a special break as a senior.
Right. Right.
And you haven't asked my age, but if you don't mind, I'll use a Casey Stengel quote.
Okay.
People remember Casey Stengel? He's the only man to have managed all 4 New York City baseball teams, the New York Giants, the Brooklyn Dodgers, the New York Yankees, and the New York Mets.
Right.
He was asked about his age. He said, well, I'm so old that most of my friends who are older than me are already dead. Of course, that's meaningless, but I like
Right. Yeah.
copying that Stengelese. There are many of us other quotes that I love, but
Right.
he's
Okay.
a great man. He used to fall asleep during the Mets games, but I promise I'm not that old. I am never going to fall asleep during a Senate session.
Right.
And I'm active. I mean, I walk 3 to 6 miles every day, and I'm keeping up with a 13-year-old daughter. And I would like to add too that I do donate to Hope Pregnancy Center, and I bring my daughters every year to the annual father-daughter purity dance.
Okay.
So I don't need a pat on the back for it. I feel it's something I must do, and I enjoy. And we have a dance coming up April 6th at the Wilma Rudolph Event Center. That's run by the Parks Department. I think I bought the first pair of tickets for that, and Lorraine and I will just as we did last year, we'll dance every dance.
Well, community outreach is great, especially involvement. I'm sure we as the citizens, especially me, appreciate that. So, like I said, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you coming today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Caleb Johnson. I have Jason Knight with me today to answer some questions about his or her pursuit for a seat in State Senate. So, Jason, what are some of your policies, and what are you hoping to accomplish in the seat?
Well, I'd like to bring transparency to the state government, similar to that of which I've brought to local government as a county commissioner. With my social media, I provide a copy of the agenda, then I provide polls to allow the community to have a voice and a say in the things that we, the local legislators, vote on. And I'd like to bring that same aspect to the state.
Now, with us being at a college campus, education's near and dear to our hearts. So what are your current stances on education?
Well, I'm pro-education, I'm pro-educators, but one thing that's actually near and dear to my heart is ensuring that disabled individuals have the proper care and needs, because everybody learns at a different speed. Right? No one learns the exact same, so we want to ensure that we're catering to those individuals who may not have the same ability as everyone else.
Right.
I have 2 children that are autistic, and I want to ensure that we refine the IEP processes in schools at the state level. I want us to take a look at those processes and see how we can streamline them, because sometimes it takes a bit long for an IEP to be approved. So
Absolutely.
I want us to be able to take a look at those processes and see what we can do to refine and shorten that time frame.
Absolutely. So a very hot topic about education, of course, is safety in the schools. Now, safety is, of course, a very broad term, but how What do you think would actually work best for safety?
Well, to be quite honest, I grew up in places like New York, where you had metal detectors in schools, and it was a lot safer in the schools than it was outside the schools. So I think the state of Tennessee should be looking at those aspects. I mean, I saw a bill here not too long ago that said legislator was trying to put, what was it, first aid kits in school, and that's all well and good, and it's great, but how are we creating deterrents to individuals who mean our children harm? How are we creating those deterrents? What deterrents are we putting in place to ensure that they don't, come to the school in order to commit a malicious act? I mean, most people don't understand. 90% of school shootings are done by the student that attend that school.
Right.
So we need a visual deterrent to those students attempting to do harm to keep them from doing harm. And I think metal detectors or increased SROs or SROs with metal detecting wands at the door would be ideal. I've heard the argument that it may take students a long time to get into the school and it may increase that time frame, but I think I prefer having my kids safe and secure is paramount over whether or not it's going to take an extra hour to get the kids into the schools. And having 5 kids within the school system myself, I want to ensure that they're safe, and I want to ensure that the safety of the community's children as well.
Absolutely. So what experiences do you have that makes you a strong leader? And with these experiences that you're going to be getting, if you get the state Senate seat, what do you plan on doing with them?
Well, leadership experience, I've been a company commander twice. I've commanded hundreds of soldiers in multiple scenarios. I've written hundreds of policies from alcoholism and drug abuse to transgenders in the military, and writing those policies, putting those policies together, and submitting those policies for approval, or being the approval authority for those particular policies. So that leadership skills that I learned in the military, having 15 years worth of that leadership skills, I think provides me the ideal opportunity to hold this particular seat. As a matter of fact, the individual who held the seat previously was an avid veteran advocate and a veteran in the military himself. So I think I would be the ideal candidate having those particular leadership skills for that particular position.
Right. Let's say you get the Senate seat. What do you plan on learning? What do you hope to learn, rather, from that experience?
Well, I hope to gain more insight on the needs of the community, gain more insight on how the state government communicates with local government, and then also liaisons with the federal government as well. And that will give me a better understanding of that whole process as a whole.
So who or what inspired you to run for Senate?
To be quite honest, I honestly, I prayed to God in reference to this particular position, and it just kept on etching at me. And I'd like to say there was a particular event that occurred during my time on the commission when I asked a few questions to some individuals who vied for the appointed seat. And making a long story short, a couple of those answers were inadequate within my viewing, and it's in regards to taking care of veterans, and I wanted to ensure that the veteran representation was still provided at the state level as it previously was under the previous individual who held that particular seat.
Right. Now, are you planning on having any town halls if elected, and if so, what are you hoping to gain from these town halls?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I've conducted, as a county commissioner, I've conducted a few town halls myself. I've also conducted virtual town halls, what I call a virtual town hall, where I utilize my social media to reach the individuals who follow me on social media. And for those that don't follow me on social media, I hosted a in-person town hall. So yes, I definitively plan on ensuring that I hold town halls with probably once a month to discuss anything that may be on the state's agenda, and give the community an opportunity to voice their opinions, concerns, or whatever it is that's bothering them about that particular issue.
And definitely transparency has a lot to do with community involvement. So those town halls will be a great place. And
Absolutely.
so thank you very much, Jason Knight, for coming out. I really appreciate you offering your time.
I want to say thank you for having me.
I'm Caleb Johnson with APSU-TV, and we thank our candidates for coming out and speaking with us. I encourage you all to go vote. The primaries are March 7th, with general elections being April 23rd.